And welcome back to episode 188 of the Weekly Tech Rant with me, Jay.
And me, Karl.
Well, Carl, I have here in front of me something black and shiny.
Ooh, we always like black and shiny.
It is not a wet penguin.
No, it has arrived then, has it?
It has. The upgrade for my M1 MacBook Pro 2021 edition is a 2024 Space Black M4 Pro 24 gig, 1 terabyte beasticle, which is currently restoring from backup. So I can't tell you anything about it. But what I can tell you is when it got out of the box, it felt like it had been stored in Antarctica.
Back the lorry overnight.
It was rather cold, my friend. That's all I can say. But yeah, it's here. It has arrived.
Well, that's a fun project for the rest of the afternoon.
It is indeed. I was listening to another podcast this morning that was talking around, upgrade cycles of the M devices and comparing some of the benchmarks that have come out across, other sites, so like Max Tech and all kinds of people like that, and Geekbench talking about it. And basically, it does seem that if you were on the M2 if you're on the M3, no need to upgrade realistically.
Yeah.
Unless you need Apple Intelligence, but you could probably get that realistically, can't you? The other one was M2s. The M4 Pro destroyed the M2 Ultra in Geekbench.
Yep, exactly.
14 cores versus 70 plus cores, wasn't it, when the M2 Ultra? Because there's two M Maxes smashed together, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's quite a lot of cores.
It also beats the M3 Max, and it's like, they're saying it absolutely annihilates the M1. So for those that are on the M1 and probably early M2, not M2 Pro or M2 Max, then it's a decent upgrade. So I'm intrigued to see how it's going to perform. And obviously whether I get any benefit out of those Thunderbolt 5 ports, because all of my Thunderbolt 5 accessories, cough, cough.
I did see something on the Mini as well, video review, and they were saying it's cracking value, the base model, exceptional value, but as soon as you upgrade it, it loses its value. The Apple upgrade pricing, the ladder they create, it ruins the value of it. I mean, even when you upgrade, it's still a cracking machine, but the performance value kind of comparison just drops rapidly once you start upgrading.
Well, I mean, look at that when we were talking about the M4s, wasn't it? The M4 MacBook Pros, and we were saying if you want to go to 36 gig of RAM, you've got to jump up a CPU spec to the M4 Max.
And a storage spec,
and the storage spec. And then you're still paying $400 extra, or £400 or whatever, equivalency. Yep. But it's like, well, hang on a minute, why can't I get that amount of RAM on the M4 Pro? It's like the whole laddering and stock I guess alignment is just there to make money, and it's
expertly
so wrong.
Designed to extract as much cash from you as possible,
and psychologically designed, I would argue as well.
Massively, definitely.
So anyway, I'm looking forward to this. This is my new daily driver. So I will be looking forward to getting it up and running once it's done its backup and the M1 goes back, and we're into a new next 3-year cycle. So it should be good. Should be good. Nice. I'll let you know next week how it has performed in its first road test. Anyway, so this week then we've got a hell of a lineup this week. I mean, the bucket was overflowing when I was looking at the notes, and we've already started looking into next week. I can tell you now, listeners, that next week we are going to be talking not just the usual tech, but we're going to be talking satellites. We're going to be talking spy satellites. We're going to be talking supersonic aircraft as well. So next week should be a good show. But let's concentrate on this week then. So we got a whole lineup across Apple. We've got gaming. We've got Bitcoin, but not what you think. And the rumor mill's bursting at the seams as well, isn't it?
It is.
Gosh, it is. It's a busy week. Right. Well, let's kick off then with the first story of the week, which is... Well, when I read this in the show notes, I was like, Concord. I was like, are we doing this again?
But for a while.
It's not. It's the Concord, the game that we talked about a couple of months ago, isn't it, for PlayStation?
It was, back in September, wasn't it? That one.
Not going anywhere fast, unlike the plane.
It was a quick recap. It was a bit of a disastrous launch for Sony, wasn't it? I think it released back on PlayStation PC back end of August. Within about 2 weeks, Sony had basically said... they've removed it from sale immediately. It's going to be taken offline September the 6th. All players receive a full refund. And they basically they look to rework it and relaunch it. I mean, analysts estimate they've probably only sold 25,000 units and peaked at 600 on concurrent players on Steam, so not great. but it's just got worse. So rather than reworking it, they permanently cancelled the game and closed down the studio that made it. That's quite a drastic step to be taken to close the
It
studio as
is.
well.
It is. I mean, you've got to understand. I mean, that's not just closing the studio. That's people's jobs, isn't it? That's obviously a roadmap of anything they've got going. But it's clearly money driven. There's no. Yeah, you're right. There's no other argument here, is there? It's money. And
it is. But
Concord did not land properly. And that's, these puns are not intentional, by the way.
No, but we had this conversation last time about September that it was madness launching, well, not just another Fortnite or equivalent, but then to charge £40 for the privilege when you can go to Fortnite, COD Warzone for free.
Yeah, why would you do it? Why?
It would have to have been an exceptional game to get people to part all their money.
Yeah, but to be frank, it wasn't. Was it based on the gameplay videos, based on the reviews?
That's not what Sony thinks. They have said certain aspects of Concord were exceptional, but others did not land enough with players.
What was this? I think on Steam they had all-time peak of 660 concurrent players.
Yeah. So it wasn't, but yes. I mean, not only did they close that studio, they chucked it in the bottom of their announcement that they're also closing another studio, aren't they? Neon Koi, which is one of their mobile studios. So another 210 people losing their jobs there, unfortunately. But I couldn't actually find out how many people were employed at Firewalk Studios.
I don't know.
Guessing more than 210.
I'm guessing so. It was a reasonable studio, wasn't it, that they were working with?
Yeah. I mean, it was meant to be a AAA game. I think, as I say, they poured a lot of money in and many years into making it.
Yeah. But I think, wasn't it Bloomberg in their report reckoned across that 210 was across the studios?
Oh, okay. Maybe I misread that.
Yeah. So I think I don't know which one was the larger of the two, but if we say over 200 people have lost their jobs, I think that's definitely an accurate statement.
Not good
at that point. No, it's not good. And given that the gaming industry is quite, it's quite a small industry, isn't it? Jobs aren't always there, and new studios don't pop up all the time. I mean, you only have to look a little bit. I know it's in the notes, but it's related, isn't it? If you look over to, the KSP studio. Their name escapes me for a minute. What are they called?
Yep, I can't remember what they were called now.
No, but
Private Division.
Private Division, who've been spun out, haven't they? They've been spun out because KSP. Take-Two have sold them out because KSP hasn't landed, and it wasn't the only game they had.
Program for our people.
Kerbal Space Program 2. Now it wasn't the only game they had in the going. No. But it was the one that was meant to be, the launch. Kerbal Space Program was an absolutely fantastic game that was launched, how many years ago now?
10, 15, maybe? I don't know. Good 10, maybe.
Oh, it must be, isn't it? It's got to be I mean, it must be over 10 years now.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm gonna go argue that actually it was more than 10 years.
Probably.
But anyway, point is, it's a great game. Kerbal Space Program 2 was launched much anticipated. 2015 was KSP, released on early access, and KSP 2 was early access February in 2023. Still in early access by, I should say, Private Division, who were part of Take-Two Interactive. And Intercept Games is the studio, and they've been sold because it just wasn't working. Again, money. And I think
they weren't the original people, because they took the game off, didn't they? They bought the studio who originally made it, and then took the game off and gave it to someone else to make the version 2. And they wondered why it wasn't such a success.
It was exactly that, and it has not got good reviews. To be absolutely honest with you,
I held off. Thinking it was not the same studio. I held off buying it.
I love KSP. I mean, I sunk a lot of time to that. It's a great game. And I thought KSP 2, I bought into the hype, which you would do, I guess, given, and it just, you're right. It just fell flat. And I think the problem was that the last one wasn't really early access in the same of early access. It wasn't even on Steam when it first came out.
No.
And now it's obviously gone big budget and it just hasn't delivered. And yeah, it's a shame. And I think, it is a cutthroat industry, gaming. Unfortunately, it's very, very thin margins, isn't it, in a lot of these games. and obviously studios do not perform, you've got to. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got games like Modern
GTA
Warfare and
5. Rockstar
or
Games
GTA
licensed
5,
to
Modern
print money.
Warfare, rolling in billions, effectively, isn't it, over the years?
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very different. So sorry to hear about the job losses for these people who at the studios, Firewalk and what was the other one, Neon Koi or whatever it was.
Yeah, Neon Koi.
I hope you guys managed to find roles at other organisations. But as it said, Firewalk said in there, wasn't it, their post, ending transmission.
Indeed. So talking of space, Apple have they're going to be expanding their iPhone satellite services. They bought 20% of the company who were running it, Global Star, didn't they? So they've
So this is their emergency SOS thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and messaging over satellite as
That's
well.
right.
Yeah, it's expanded into. But the company that's running it is called Global Star, and Apple have just invested an additional 1.1 billion in satellite service infrastructure. Part of that was buying 20% ownership for 400 million, wasn't it? Of Global Star. I don't know why I didn't just buy the lot.
Well,
20% was only 400 million. It was only 2 billion. Apple have done bigger purchases. It's not like they're short of cash.
No, I'm wondering whether it's to avoid any regulatory issues.
Yeah, you're right. It could well be.
But I mean, let's take a step back to when this was first announced in 2022, wasn't it? With the iPhone 14.
Yeah.
And we were like, wow. And then we also were like,
see that coming.
Didn't see that coming. And then the question was, what's that going to cost? Because initially they were saying it was going to be for
free for the first year, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then they extended it to another year. So we got to 2024, didn't we? And now they've extended it another year.
Yeah, so still free, but I'm sure there must be plans to introduce charges in the future at some point, because this isn't cheap to be giving away. I mean, I know iPhones are not cheap either, but Apple likes to make a profit.
They do.
How many people are actually using it? I don't know. I mean, I've never had the chance of using it yet. Last time I didn't have a signal, I was on the underground, so there was no chance of me seeing a satellite at that point. So I certainly haven't used it. But I can imagine them charging maybe keeping the emergency SOS stuff free, but charging for the rest, or maybe it's bundled in with Apple One.
Well, that's a good point. We did surmise that, didn't we? Do you remember before the extension, we were wondering whether or not it'd be Apple One. Now, again, I've not used it. The emergency one, I hope I never have to use, but we've heard of stories of people where it's, been really, really useful and saved lives. The messaging one does, I have to say, I'd like to give the messaging one a go, but you're right, I've not been in a situation where there is a messaging.
Wow, we need a field trip.
Well, yeah, you mentioned about the tube. Soon they're bringing mobile cellular signal into the tube network itself.
Yeah, I went into London early in the week. I met you. The line I was on, not my normal line, zero signal whatsoever. My normal line now has full cellular underground.
Well, exactly. Yeah. So won't be needing that satellite connection. 100 meters underground.
No, but so look, I can see him keeping the emergency SOS free forever. That's a nice USP that if they're already running the service, I can't imagine cost them too much.
No, I think you're right. And I think it was probably easier for Apple to take a large chunk of the company to give them say in deployment capabilities, obviously first dibs on capacity, than buying the whole company and then getting additional scrutiny from the FCC. Because now, of course, they're now a communications company as well as a phone company,
Oh, yeah. And all the other regulators in Europe to go with it.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right. That's the situation.
Especially
that
the
Apple,
UK one.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not all they bought, was it?
No, they have, Tim Apple has opened up his checkbook in this last couple of weeks, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And they've picked up Pixelmator, which was one of the cheap, I'm going to say it wasn't free, but it was one of the cheaper alternatives to some of the higher end Adobe tools, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. More aimed at mobile and stuff like that to start.
Absolutely. Where they were allowed to, you Pixelmator Pro, Pixelmator for iOS, and there were other Photomator apps as part of the group. And they were good alternatives to the Adobe apps where you could, do image editing, and as you mentioned, particularly designed for working on the phones or the iPads as a smaller screen, weren't they?
A one-time purchase.
A one-time purchase. And actually, I'm pretty confident, bear with me, I'm sure I've got Pixelmator installed. In fact, I have.
Nice.
I do have Pixelmator installed.
So you have bought it at some point.
I have. Clearly, I must have. When did I do that?
But it was a one-time purchase. You've had free upgrades ever since you bought it. But yeah, so I mean, the company's been around 17 years apparently. So the staff and obviously all the board and that lot will join Apple post acquisition. Apple have said there are no immediate changes to Pixelmator apps following the acquisition, although I suspect that will change in the future, whether it'll just be free or whether it'll be merged into Apple Photos or something along those lines. Apple have a purpose for buying this. It will change at some point in the future.
Yeah, I was going to say, very few apps have Apple never integrated, and the only one I can think of is FileMaker, a company called Claris International, who were formerly known as FileMaker.
Yep.
Who create well, they initially built other Mac applications, but it's a rational database, which is FileMaker.
Yeah.
And they were bought by Apple. They were created as a subsidiary company of Apple in the late 80s. But they've never been rolled in. Never been rolled in. They are still a separate company.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is all pending regulatory approval, which will be interesting.
Well, again, I guess the argument here would be: is it going to damage the market? Because the example, one that was turned down.
The example of the document was just in the article was rubbish. That was a comparison.
It was Adobe versus Figma, wasn't it?
Yeah. Who are two giants in the industry. Pixelmator, while popular in consumer land, isn't
no, not at all. So I don't see this as a major issue. I think, they're not depriving the consumer, are they? Because the app will still be for sale. It'll still continue. I think it'll be rolled into the apps. I think not straight away, but I think within the near future, you'll see those capabilities show up in the Photos app.
Definitely. I mean, we had the similar kind of thing with Dark Sky, didn't we? The weather one. Dark Sky continued.
Yeah, it took a while.
A good year or two. And the APIs I was using were a bit longer still. But all those features eventually made their way into the weather app, and Dark Sky disappeared.
And I suspect it will be very similar to what you've got here, because they won't want to, they're not going to take it straight out of the market. It's not giving them a competitive advantage, is it, to take it out of the market? So I think it'll definitely stay there until you're right. We'll have a similar situation, and then it'll show up.
The road,
yeah, and then capabilities will show up there. So I think it's not, it's a good purchase for Apple. It bolsters their imaging capabilities. Pixelmator already had a lot of those features that you'd hope to have, like the modified features, isn't it? Removing certain things in photos and that.
Yeah.
And obviously we've got some of those already now in the Photos app, leveraging Apple's, I'm not going to say AI, but ML capabilities.
Yeah.
So it's good. I think it's a logical step. They need to bolster it, and why not?
Yeah, why not? Next article, and this is a very interesting one for me. So there are rumors or reports that Nvidia will be releasing a high-end ARM-based CPU for PCs, reportedly going into production next year. Nvidia entering. I mean, Nvidia have done CPUs before, haven't they? They had the Tegra chips and stuff like that, but not a high-end gaming desktop CPU to go along with their GPUs.
I think this is quite interesting, because if this is true, and then Nvidia are now stepping into, and I say this word loosely, the CPU market, this could be a major concern for Intel. Now, first caveat of this statement, and I think you probably are thinking yourself, is Windows on ARM hasn't really taken off, has it?
I suppose there hasn't been a compelling reason.
Right. There hasn't been a compelling reason, absolutely, but this could be the compelling reason, couldn't it? Because the Qualcomm chips really haven't delivered, have they?
No. I mean, no. Tell I. I'm going to say no. I think they have. I think they've done a good job for their first. Well, this is technically the second stab at it. We'll call it the second stab at this. I think it's a good enough chip for your average consumer.
Granted, but it hasn't created a compelling moment in the market to see not consumers or enterprise decide to shift to an ARM-based architecture. And a lot of that, of course, is due to software compatibility.
Yes.
And I know Windows can handle that now. We've got that, isn't it? It can do some of that. But it isn't like Apple did with the Rosetta layer, is it? Where it was almost seamless to a degree.
No, although V2 of that's meant to be a massive upgrading coming out soon. So it'd be interesting to see where that ends up.
Yeah. But I think you're right. I think Nvidia here, given their current position, could be able to disrupt this marketplace. The real concern, though, is not Nvidia here. Is Intel, isn't it? Which I think is, we've seen in the last week or so, Intel really having some major issues internally, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not going well for Intel. Well, when the government starts talking about possibly bailing you out, that's not great news.
No, not at all. Not at all. So this new chip, then, effectively, are we talking just a chip or is it a SoC? I think it's more of a SoC, isn't it?
I presume it's more of a SoC, but don't really know. Look, they said that the initial report says that Nvidia will be making two. One purely in-house designed, their own CPU, as they're calling it, but also one in partnership with MediaTek.
Those guys.
MediaTek, MediaTek's probably going to be aimed more at the enterprise version of this, where the SoC will support things like 5G cellular, because Nvidia doesn't have any of that. MediaTek does. Whereas the consumer will be 100% Nvidia designed. But yeah, could you imagine something like an Apple M4 Max with a 4090 bolted into the SoC?
Plus the memory on the SoC.
Plus the memory on the SoC. Yeah, exactly. So it would just be insane. It'd be huge and power hungry, I imagine. But if your first product is aiming at PC gamers, we don't care about the power requirements. Let's be honest.
Unless you're putting in Intel architecture, but I mean,
but Intel's was so bad it overheated massively, wasn't it? So and killed itself. I'm sure Nvidia's going to do a better job than that. But I mean, look, we're not a PC game isn't looking for it to have all day battery life because it's going in a desktop and it doesn't have battery. Our CPUs take 200-300 watts. A 4090 takes 400 or 500, 600 watts. Does it? Plus the rest of the stuff. So there's a big enough power envelope that Nvidia doesn't have to worry too much about saving power and could go all out.
When I read this, I was like, wow, if these are real and they appear, and given where Intel sit at the minute and the capabilities that Nvidia have, I'm like, this could be a game changer. It really could. If they come out with performance as well as capability, then if it doesn't have the performance, then it's going to go nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. There has to be some upside to this. Because this isn't going to be a drop-in replacement for your Intel AMD, is it? This is going to be a whole new platform you have to replace.
No, and we were having this conversation offline, weren't we, the other day? Do you remember? Yeah. And the thing is, when we looked at Apple, and Apple, Apple changed the whole architecture overnight, basically, didn't they? Yeah. You're like, that's it. We're no longer Intel. We're now got Apple Silicon. Thanks very much. Moving forward, this is it. And obviously, it's taken them a few years to do the full transition, but effectively overnight, they were no longer an Intel house. Now, you still had Intel Macs, you still had Intel software, but if you were taking the latest equipment from them, you were getting Apple Silicon, weren't you?
Yes.
And the OS changed, but obviously they had that translation layer of Rosetta in there. And I think your point was like, but the Windows issue is that Windows' whole USP is that it can run applications from 30 years ago on a piece of hardware that was put together from bits of a spare box. And it might not run beautifully, but it'll run. I think that's the thing, isn't it? The world over, you've got all of these legacy applications that are still knocking around because they are running code that was written 30 years ago or designed for an operating system 30 years ago and have been upgraded. And Windows itself, up until about Windows 10, 11, still suffered from its own problem, didn't it? They still had code in there that was, could be traced back to Windows NT.
I'd probably still argue most of it's in there.
Well, yeah, so I think, this is, I think, Microsoft, almost, I don't think they'll do it, but Microsoft, I think, need to say, right, you know what? And I think, stealing from your comment, wasn't it, was, Windows, let's say Windows 15. I know we're jumping ahead. Windows 15 is going to be ARM. This is our direction. Going forward, this is
Zero
what needs to
backwards
be it.
compatibility or very limited backwards compatibility.
Yeah, and Windows 14 will have an extended service life up to X to allow transition, but this is it. And I think if the hardware can meet the software, then that will happen. But I think unlike Apple, where they have full control over both sides of the coin, it's going to take a long time.
Yes, a massively long time, if ever.
If ever. But, if chips like this start to really gain traction and provide that performance, and you're right, I think it's a bit like, probably this is a terrible analogy actually thinking about it, but if it's a bit like, in the 80s where a particular adult industry picked up on VHS and all of a sudden that became
Betamax,
that became the de facto standard, didn't it?
Indeed.
I think if the gaming industry particularly got on board with it, I think it would move.
Yeah, no, if it provides sufficiently more power than what you can get on an x86, then the people will make apps for it, won't they? Or
of course
convert their apps to run on it.
Yeah, absolutely. But until then, we'll see. But until these come out, I'll be interested to see how they compare versus those Qualcomm chips next year.
Yeah, but I mean, we've got CES in January. That's initially when Nvidia usually do a big reveal. We're expecting to see the 59, 58, 57, the 5000 series GPU. Maybe they drop a bombshell there and say, this is what we've got coming later in the year.
Well, talking about Windows then, and costing more money.
Backwards compatibility, yep.
Well, yeah. So Microsoft then, I'll caveat that, sorry. Windows 10 is coming to the end of its life, isn't it? Which I can't believe I'm saying that. It doesn't seem that long since it was
this time next year.
Yeah, it's coming up 10 years, isn't it? So it's 9 years at the minute. We're coming up to 10 years this time next year. And there is the extended security program, isn't there, which is coming out to consumers. Which now this used to be this used to be enterprise only, didn't it? Where you could pay Microsoft money to extend the life of it. Funnily enough, there was a particular operating system many years ago that didn't have this. And what was that particular bit of malware called?
WannaCry?
Oh, that's the one. I want to cry. Yes, because
we all wanted to cry at that point.
anyway, so this is Windows. Now you could buy into the ESU then for
as a consumer. When it ends October the 14th next year, you'll be able to pay a fee of $30 a year to access these kind of critical security updates. So but Microsoft obviously emphasizing that this ESU program is a temporary solution, not intended for long-term use, and the cost of the ESU program will double each consecutive year with cumulative payments required for late enrollment. So 30 next year, 60 the year after, 120 a year after. It's going to get pricey if you want that one. Bit of a strange one for consumers, though. I mean, you've had plenty of time to upgrade to Windows 11, if you cared about security. Because Windows 11 came out in 2021, I think.
Yes, it was. I think, it must be, yeah.
And Microsoft, it's not a paid upgrade. Microsoft have basically been giving Windows 11 away for free, hasn't it? To pretty much everyone.
I was just going to say, in fact, I'd almost argue, to be honest, that they've been doing that for the last 10 years.
Well, I mean, yeah. Windows 10 was that a free upgrade from?
Well, it wasn't, was it? I mean,
I
mean, if you're a consumer, if you're an enthusiast to be on Windows 11 already, but if you're a consumer, you will have been prompted to upgrade to Windows 11 a lot, wouldn't you? There would have been
an exception if your hardware is not up to scratch.
That's a fair point. Yeah,
because I mean, look, mind you, even then, Windows 11 doesn't have a huge hardware requirements. You need 4 gig of RAM, 64 gig of storage. You need a TPM or a chip with a TPM, and that basically means anything AMD's Ryzen 3000 or above, which came out in 2019, or Intel's 9th gen, which came out in 2018. So, look, really, your machine is going to be over 6 years old if you can't upgrade. And to be honest, if you haven't upgraded your machine in 6 years, you're not going to pay the £30 security updates, are you?
No, you're the wrong consumer type. So absolutely.
This is aimed at a very niche subset of people, isn't it, who can't upgrade for some reason. Maybe it's compatibility. Maybe the software doesn't work on Windows 11. One of those rare cases. They have to stick to Windows 10, but they need the security.
And that is going to be a really niche.
In consumer land, yes, which is exactly why businesses have it, because they do more often not have those niche requirements. In-house built apps, the team aren't there anymore, blah, blah, blah. But consumers,
But I'd almost argue as well, though, if you were an enterprise customer, right, this is not like years gone by, all right? And you will have known what the end of life was for Windows 10. You should have been planning an upgrade, refresh cycle around that, or
yeah,
build around it. And it's, years ago, you're right. Up when we got to Windows 10, backwards compatibility, apps running it. This day and age, I'm sorry, it is should not be an issue that your applications cannot run on Windows 11,
yeah,
because Windows 10 and 11 are very, very close in architecture. And given that I'm going to say this, and people shoot me down. Given that most applications these days are either cloud-based, and those that are not cloud-based are pretty specific and are probably running in maybe their own VDI, or they're running in a sandbox environment, it's probably a very limited subset of businesses that cannot. And if you think about small businesses, most small businesses today that are digital are using cloud-based software.
They've not invested millions in their own custom-built applications.
No. And those that have, I'd like to think, and I speak from our own position, where what we do in our day jobs and the industries we've worked in, should be moving to rebuild applications either in a cloud native, or have moved their environments into the cloud at least anyway. So, the end OS shouldn't really matter.
No,
this day and age,
I would love to see, in a year or two's time, what the take-up is of that, consumer-wise, what the numbers are.
Yeah, I would be very curious to see that as well.
Maybe it's just easy money. You already do it for enterprise. It's just a tick box someone to let consumers do it. Maybe it's a quick buck, but I can't imagine you're going to make much money out of it.
Yeah, and people moaning that, if you're a consumer, why wouldn't I go to Windows 10 because I've got to have a Microsoft account to access my... Well, no, you don't have to have a Microsoft account. You can get around that. That's not...
Yeah, Microsoft may have made it harder again in the latest
But it's
release.
not, and people going that it's Linux is better. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Linux is not an enterprise operating system, and it is still not going to.
No matter, we're going to lose some viewers over that one.
Yeah, but it's not, is it?
No, I think what you mean there is an enterprise one in the server realm.
Yeah, but nobody's running Linux across their consumer data, their end user estate, unless your name is Canonical and you are selling Ubuntu. Just don't see it, But anyway,
good job we don't have a comment section.
For that anyway, yeah. Moving swiftly on.
But yes, so Bitcoin.
Oh no, this is this is a story.
This is right. So obviously the identity of the Bitcoin creator Satoshi Nakamoto basically still remains a mystery despite numerous investigations and claims. Previous candidates we've had Dorian Nakamoto, Craig Wright here in the UK.
Well, he definitely wasn't. We know that for a fact.
Yeah, he's all been debunked, failed by proof, blah blah blah. But don't worry, we've got a new Satoshi here. Step up.
Yes, we have.
Stephen Muller.
Yeah, I'm going to go Muller. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So apparently, recently organised a press conference asserting that he is Satoshi, even bizarrely asking attendees to pay for a seat at this.
This is brilliant, wasn't it?
Press conference. Front row seats are £100. Another $50 if you want to ask unlimited questions, or for $500 you can sit on stage with him. Yeah, they're all very strange for a man claiming to be Satoshi. Satoshi owns over 1 million bitcoins at today's price of 76,000 ago. He's worth 70-80 billion. Why does he need people to pay for seats? But regardless, apparently 12 people did turn up to the event at the Frontline Club. I think that's London, isn't it?
It was London, wasn't it? And the
BBC
went along. Yeah, BBC went along as well, but did not pay the money. Unsurprisingly,
no, they did not.
And Muller also apparently said that he would, or make a promise that he would unlock and access one of the first ever bitcoins. Now, given that if you were Satoshi Nakamoto, you would have had access to that, and you would be able to basically, if you did that, it would be irrevocable proof, wouldn't it? You either are that person, or Well, or
or
you.
you found the key, but
Yeah, I was just going to say you either way. Either
somehow
way,
found the key. But if so,
you're a very
congratulations.
rich man. Yeah,
Exactly.
you're a very rich man.
Yeah, so he promised to
Was
do
he?
that, but no. But bizarrely, literally just before it was starting, the whole thing was interrupted by the people who actually own the place, the Frontline Club, just to say that they were just renting a room. They were not officially endorsing this. We want nothing to do with it, kind of thing.
What? Step away, step away.
Step away. Yeah, we just rented a room. We don't endorse it or approve it. And interestingly, Stephen Muller is a company in a complex legal fight over fraud allegations with the organizer of said event.
No, I mean, it's like Craig Wright was up to his eyeballs in litigation, wasn't he? Until
Yeah.
that court ruling basically was like, we don't think you are. So
Yeah.
everybody you're trying to sue, not happening, is it?
Yeah. Unless, in fact, you prove it by unlocking coin number 1.
And I think I wonder whether or not the person that created this could. I'm starting to wonder that they might be dead.
Possibly. Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at that point. Could it have just been
Because
it was his dying thing? He built this and then he knew he was dying, and just before he did, he released it to the world, and then that was it. It was his legacy.
yeah, I mean, because if you look at it the other way, if it was built by a group of people, I'm sorry,
Somebody
right?
would have spilled by now.
I know it's a bit different if you've got a state secret and you are under pain of death working for the CIA and Black Ops. You're very unlikely to say anything. But academics working on it, somebody somewhere would have said something at some point. It would have come out, and it just seems odd. So then, actually, I guess you're right. On the other side, if it isn't someone who's died, this could be, I mean, could be coming out of someone like the NSA or someone like that that's been put out there to see what happens. And that's why it's never been touched, because the government doesn't really need to play with it, do they?
Oh, exactly. But yeah,
it's not him.
It's not him. He did not provide any proof whatsoever. So yeah, and then most people got up and walked out
Because these people, I don't know what these people think they're going to prove. I mean, you must have either some real narcissism and arrogance to stand up there and say you're this fictional, because at this stage, let's be honest, fictional person.
Yeah, it's a pseudonym, isn't it? Or whatever you call it. It's an alias, I should say.
Right.
That isn't his real name.
And the fact that you expect people to take you at face value and not prove it.
Yeah, especially when the proof is an easy one. If you are actually them, it will take you all of 20 seconds to pop in your crypto key and unlock that and make a transfer somewhere.
Yeah, it's just absolute rubbish. Another one bites at us, isn't it? It's just goodbye, thank you very much.
But look, even looking at the photos of the guy, I was like, it's not him.
He did look a little bit eccentric, didn't he? I'll give him that.
He did, yeah. It just wasn't him.
No, but then again, what are we expecting? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but it just wasn't him.
No, that we can say for certain.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
It is the Tech Review, and why we've got it's a mixed bag today, but it's flowing over with contradictory statements, isn't it? I think
it is. Well, first we started off with Quo, didn't we? So
we did,
basically saying that that affordable Apple Vision headset, which is meant to be out next year, is now being delayed to sometime beyond 2027. Although maybe Apple realised that cheaper at 2,000 isn't really cheap enough for most people.
Yeah, I think that's only cheaper if you don't want to be spending $4,000, but you can still afford to spend $2,000. It's not necessarily, consumer cheap, is it?
Yeah, I mean, and certainly not when spatial computing, as they call it, hasn't really caught on yet, has it?
No.
Yeah, and a headset at 2,000 really is like to broaden that appeal at the moment. But he did come back on to confirm that the M5 powered Gen 2 Vision Pro is still on plan for next year.
Well, which makes sense because this isn't something that's going to have a yearly upgrade cycle, is it?
No.
And that does, I'll probably sit in line with the other products that they're releasing. So yeah, okay, I'm good for that. I'm probably going to sit around the same price point, I imagine, which means that if they sit it around the same price point as the first gen, you are getting more for your money, I suppose, aren't you? In that argument,
you are. But then out of nowhere, we had Mark Gurman come along and say, "Whoa, they might be changing the cheaper version, or the Lite, whatever we want to call it, to be powered by your iPhone. So take the M2, M5, take the compute out of it. We already know it's meant to be losing the eyesight on the front and other bits and pieces to cut costs. But if we take the M2, the M5 processing out and let your phone do it, because your phone should be plenty powerful enough, that could seriously reduce the price.
Well, do you remember before the Vision Pro got launched? I'm pretty sure there was
Me and you had a conversation on air, certainly off air, about how's this going to run. Is it going to be streamed from your Mac? Is it going to be powered off your phone? Which is, well, we presumed that was going to happen because they weren't going to stick an M1 or an M2 in a headset.
Well,
that was insane.
So this I can't argue with. I think this is probably a logical step. And you're stepping now into the ring with Meta, aren't you? Because they're devices that can do both standalone and come off, tether off a device, And this makes more sense because if you've got an M4, 5, let's say M5 chip or, whatever, M4 Pro, whatever, something like that, and even the A18s and whatever they're going to come out with next year, that phone is not using all of that compute. I'm sorry, it is not.
No, it's a bit like your iPad, isn't it? With its what's the
M1?
Is it M1, M2? Is it M2 the latest
iPad? Mine's the M1. Mine's the
M1, but M2 is the latest. And I'm like, that iPod's not even using half of that.
No way. So I think actually you're right. The cheaper version of the Vision Pro isn't really likely to be a standalone device. It's probably going to be a tethered or paired device. That allows you to leverage the compute you've already got. So I think that is far more likely than a cut down cheap version.
That does align what Quo is saying, that it's been delayed. It's been delayed because they're redesigning it to be offloaded by a Mac or an iPhone or whatever, which, I think the two kind of tie together, just looking at different angles here. And could we see the headset drop below 1,000? If we're just talking about a lot cheaper chipset in it to handle the transmission, the data, blah, blah, and some decent displays, probably not the full Vision Pro level of resolution, maybe cut down there. Could we see it drop below 1,000, down to 600, 700?
Well, if you're not having to put that compute in, probably you are.
Yeah, I mean, and at that point, you go, I'm not, other than the iPhone, I am not invested in the Mac ecosystem whatsoever, but £600-700, I'd go, maybe I'll give it a go. I'd certainly think about it. $3,500, no. $2,000, no. I know for that I wouldn't use it enough. £600-700 is still a lot of money as an accessory for an iPhone, but I think it would get people thinking.
I think you'd find there's a higher uptake on it.
Much higher uptake
than there is now, because I know you're right. I'm not going to deny it's a lot of money, because it is a lot of money, but it's under that 1,000. So, people who are buying an iPhone would probably buy one of these. I'm not the same people, but I mean, if you can afford to buy an iPhone, top end iPhone or a Mac, you could probably afford to buy one of these.
Definitely. It's not quite the same price as a Quest. Quest has got that bit where people go, I'll give it a go at £400. I'll give it a go. If I don't like it, I'll sell it. It's I've forgotten the term for it, but it's kind of an easy purchase, isn't it? Take a punt on it.
Yeah, I think okay, it's not going to have the full depth of capability, I doubt, because it's not. But actually, you know what? I'm thinking about it. I'd probably be up for that, to be fair.
I would. Imagine sitting on the plane, your 100-inch screen, hooked up to your iPhone, streaming your stuff. Well, not streaming, you're on a plane, but you know what I mean. Watching your videos, playing games on it, sitting down, obviously. It could be a nice, easy travel device to take with you.
Yeah, that's what I tell you. I'm down for that. Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Where do I sign up?
Where do I sign up? Indeed,
exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But look, either way, I think we're still waiting 2 more years to find out what their cheaper, light, whatever we're going to call it, version of this looks like. But interesting to see.
Definitely interesting to see. So, talking about what I mentioned at the start of the show.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Old Mark Urban, him of everything, has come out with the latest update in his on Power newsletter, excuse me,
Yeah.
suggesting that Apple's redesign of the MacBook Pro now isn't going to come next year instead. Which, because the rumors were that we were looking at the OLEDs, weren't we, for MacBook Pro in
Yeah, and they
2025?
kind of have a new design every 4-ish years.
Yeah.
Don't they? We're looking at maybe the OLEDs from the iPad Pro.
But he now is saying that it's likely that Apple won't do a full overhaul until 2026.
Yeah.
Which I tell you, it's kind of. But what worries me a little bit though, he also says that Apple are going to go back to a thinner design. God, please don't go back to the Johnny Ive, where I've,
the keyboard.
Here is a razor blade, like.
Well, they kind of done something. The new Air is a lot thinner, isn't it?
It is. I think
and when they the new iPad Pros.
Yeah, when they transitioned to the silicon, the MacBook got a little bit thicker, didn't it? We got the ports back. I'm guessing now, 4 iterations in, they really understand the thermal issues of the Mac. And I'm guessing then they probably have been able to make it slightly thinner. And a lot of that, I mean, let's be honest, the lid is pretty thin already.
Yeah.
It's not the lid.
Well, that might change if they're going to put the tandem OLED in there.
Well, and this was obviously the complaint before, wasn't it? The reason why they couldn't put decent webcams in was because the lid was too thin, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah. And you're saying can't put decent keyboards in. Keyboards need a certain amount of travel.
Well, yeah, which we've got now.
Which is what was wrong with the butterfly keyboards.
Yeah. Which is what we've got now. I'm kind of pleased, because there's a new Mac here. I'm not that I'll be getting a new one next year anyway. So for me, actually, it's a moot point. I shouldn't say that. But I think if anybody that's
you're done for the next 3 or 4 years, aren't you?
Yeah, anybody that's made a big investment, should we say, would be like, I'm thinking, I was going to hold off. I don't think OLED's going to cause, I think, a price increase next year if they did it. Sorry, I should say. We're also saying that the M5s next year will also be on 3 nanometer as well. So they won't be going to 2 nanometer. So if you step the generation to 26 and we get the M6s, which are likely to be 2 nanometer new displays, then we'll obviously likely get the new Mac, not Mac, Apple modems will be there as well, I suspect, won't they, as well? So, yeah, it probably makes a lot of sense for them to provide that overhaul. So, yeah, look, I'm not worried. I'll be honest with you, the screens on a MacBook are not terrible. They are pretty damn good.
No, they've always done some good screens.
I did see a great side-by-side comparison this morning of the nano screen technology from the M4 versus the standard M1 screens.
Yep.
And I have to say, I was blown away to the point of, and it was like in a normal office, a bit of fluorescent lighting, and I was like, "Damn, that looks good." But it is what it is. I couldn't justify another 100, justify that on top of it. But hey,
No. Yeah, no. It's a lot of money as it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course it is. But there you go. So that's probably a good place for us to wrap up for today. We've covered a lot of content this week. We'll be back, as I say, next week with an even, the content's already there, but it's going to be planes. We're going to talk spy satellites. Apple may or may not be getting a fine again, and Nvidia also in the news. And whatever comes out, breaking news as well, we'll pick up on that next week as well. But of course, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts and tell your friends. We're on all of the major platforms, plus YouTube, and of course, still on Twitter at Weekly Tech Rant on all of our channels and socials. So with that, I've been Jay.
I've been Karl. Have a good day, all.
That wasn't the...
And in with more rumours, iPhone 18 Pro next week.
Hang on a minute, let me check that again. Ready? That's